They walked away, and days later, they're in someone else's arms. Here's the truth. What looks like a rebound is just them running scared. And over the next few minutes, I'll show you why their perfect new relationship is already falling apart, reveal the psychology behind their behavior, and show you how no contact is your superpower. Now stay with me, because I'm also going to share the single biggest mistake that's keeping you from having your life back and feeling normal again. Now, watching them move on like you never existed feels like getting punched in the chest. You're lying awake, replaying every conversation, wondering what you did wrong, while they're out there acting like your entire relationship was just a practice round. And if you're someone who really feels betrayed by your ex, then it's crucial to understand what's actually driving their behavior. So today, we're diving deep into the psychology of why avoidant people jump into rebounds so fast. Let me paint you a picture of what's actually happening inside their mind the second they walk away from you. While you're sitting there feeling everything, the loss, the confusion, the heartbreak, they're in full panic mode. And it's not because they miss you. It's because they're about to face the one thing that terrifies avoidant people more than anything else: their own emotions. And here's why. Research shows us that people with avoidant attachment styles will leave a relationship when your connection is starting to grow stronger. Now, if you're a securely attached person, the more you feel this connection growing, the safer you begin to feel. And the safer you begin to feel, the more you want it to grow. And if you're an anxiously attached person, you really start to crave this connection more and more, even though it scares you. But for avoidance, being that deep in a relationship makes them feel trapped. And what that means for them is this: pulling away feels safer. The major thing to remember here is this: after the breakup, even though they pulled away, they still feel things. They feel the guilt, they feel the pressure, and they feel all the emotions that they don't really know how to deal with. And instead of facing those things, they rebound. Now, before we get to where that rebound all falls apart for them, let's take a moment and break down what's really happening here, because I want you to understand the deeper pattern underneath all of this. After the breakup, avoidants often feel two things at once. They feel guilt for hurting you, and they feel relief from escaping the relationship. Now, those two things don't sit well together. They cause an inner conflict. Guilt pulls one way, relief pulls the other. And that mix creates a tension that they can't name and don't fully understand. And so they start to feel restless, agitated, or even numb. But instead of slowing down to feel what they feel, they speed up and run to someone new. That's why the rebound isn't about love. It's about avoiding what's creeping up underneath. Now, when you really begin to understand this next part, it will clear up 90% of the confusion. If unpacking that inner conflict were easy, then none of us would be in this situation. But it's not easy. And for an avoidant, it means facing parts of yourself that you spent a lifetime avoiding. Fears, wounds, beliefs buried so deeply that you barely realize they exist. And the truth is, most people won't face those parts of themselves until their pain finally outweighs the fear of what they might uncover. Now let's pull back again and look at the big picture. Research shows us that avoidant people struggle with intimacy, and they use new relationships like emotional painkillers. And what that means for a rebound is this: they're not running towards love, they're running away from grief. Now that may seem strange to many of us, so maybe this will make it more relatable. Think about it like this. Imagine you're at a party and someone asks you a deeply personal question, and that makes you uncomfortable. Most people would either answer honestly or politely change the subject, but an avoidant person would suddenly remember they need to get a drink, check their phone, or talk to someone else, because they would do absolutely anything to escape that moment of vulnerability. Now, what I'm really saying here is this: that new person, their rebound, isn't better than you. They just feel safer for them. And the reason they feel safer for them is because there's no shared history, no deep conversations, no emotional risk required. And here's the thing: if you want to know why they seem so happy, it's because research shows this actually works. They genuinely feel better, but it's not happiness they're feeling, and it's not love they're feeling. It's just relief. Relief from the burden of having to show up emotionally for someone who really knows them. But what they don't realize yet is this: you can't outrun that inner conflict forever. Eventually, your nervous system catches up, and all of that guilt, confusion, and emotional tension that they don't fully understand comes right back to the surface. And here's how it happens. Now, the timeline I'm about to show you is going to completely change how you see their new relationship. And to really understand it, we're going to break down exactly what happens in their mind, moment by moment, during this rebound. But before we get into that, let's talk about the part that trips up even the smartest people: how we develop a timeline. Now, this timeline isn't pulled from one single study. It's a synthesis of findings across multiple areas of psychology: attachment theory, emotional suppression, grief processing, and rebound behavior. So when you look at how long the brain can suppress emotion, how attachment systems react over time, and how quickly rebounds tend to lose their shine, then the pattern becomes clear. The weeks I lay out here aren't rigid, they aren't set in stone, but they're real enough to prepare you for what's likely coming and when it's most likely going to happen. Now, let's start with the relief phase, day 1 to week 2. Right now, they feel free. All those things that made your relationship real, your need for closeness, your deep emotional conversations, your ability to see through their walls, right down to who they are as a person, it's all gone now. And they feel relieved. They feel relieved because their rebound seems easy, fun, surface level. What they're thinking is, finally, someone who doesn't need so much from me. But here's what's really happening. Avoidant people find real relationships exhausting. And the reason I say that is because deep down, getting close to someone triggers old fears of being controlled, rejected, or feeling not good enough. And what that means is this: intimacy doesn't feel safe for them. It feels like a threat. So in a nutshell, what looks like happiness to you is actually just the absence of stress for them. But like I said before, it doesn't last forever. And for many people, between weeks 3 and week 6, the cracks begin to show. Here, something subtle is starting to shift inside. The new person's laugh doesn't hit the same way yours did. They don't anticipate your needs the way you used to. They don't understand your weird sense of humor like you did. And little by little, their old pattern starts to creep back in. That familiar restlessness, the emotional numbness, the quiet dissatisfaction they can't quite name. It's really not about the new person, and it's not really about you. It's about repressed subconscious fears that getting too close means being controlled, rejected, or made to feel not good enough. Now, it's important to point out here that this is the trap most people fall into. They start to believe, maybe I was too much for them. Maybe I am too needy. But here's the truth. In a real relationship, an avoidant will just start feeling off. Irritable for no reason, restless, almost depressed, but they don't quite know why. They just feel something is not right. And that's because avoidants are masters at shutting down those feelings. But they can't ignore that inner conflict forever. And for most, between week 6 and week 12, it could be longer, but they start to notice a change. And this is a critical turning point because these 3 specific things tend to happen. Emotional suppression hits a limit, delayed grief begins to surface, and the rebound starts to lose its appeal. And that's when they begin to notice that hollow feeling growing inside. Their relationship is starting to feel increasingly empty. They're going through all the motions, dates, conversations, maybe even saying I love you, but something's missing. The new person wants to go deeper, wants to really know them, and suddenly that trapped feeling is back. Their subconscious is starting to recognize that they're in a relationship again. And it's going to trigger all of their old avoidant patterns, shutting down, pulling away, feeling anxious, all before their subconscious mind even understands why it's happening. And now comes the crash. For most people, this can take 3 to 6 months or even longer, but this is the moment where it starts to make sense. Because you've experienced what happens next. They might start picking fights, pulling away, feeling bored by things for no clear reason. They're irritable, restless, almost depressed, but they can't connect those feelings to what's actually happening inside of them. Here's what it all comes down to. They start feeling suffocated by normal relationship expectations, wanting to spend time together, sharing feelings, making future plans. So they start picking fights over nothing, or they become critical of things that never bothered them before. They might start working longer hours to avoid coming home. They become distant during conversations, checking their phone constantly, and they stop initiating affection and start feeling annoyed when their new partner does. Now, if you step back, here's what's really going on. They feel something's wrong, but they don't know it's their subconscious beliefs about love. So they decide it must be that the person they're with is too needy, is too much, is just not the right fit for them. And that leads them to shutting down emotionally, letting the relationship fade, and throwing themselves into new distractions. Work, hobbies, or another rebound. This is why they can move on like you never existed. This is why they can move on like their rebound never existed. And this is why no contact is your best friend. Because when most avoidant rebounds end, they just fade away. There's rarely a dramatic breakup or a clear explanation. They become distant, they find fault with everything, or they just slowly disappear. And what that means to anyone who has been through it is this: part of you is still hoping they'll wake up and realize what they lost. I know you're probably checking their social media for signs they're missing you too, waiting for proof that their life isn't as perfect as it looks, and hoping they're ready to come back and embrace the love you shared. But this is the truth, and I know this is hard to hear. When relationships end, avoidants rarely come running back. Not to you, not to their rebound, not to anyone in their past. Let's not misunderstand this. Research shows that most often, avoidants jump right into another relationship before they've even processed the last one. Now, once you understand that, everything seems clear until you realize this. Sometimes an avoidant will reach back out to you after their rebound fails. And you might start to realize this more clearly now, but this is why staying in no contact is critical. Because when they reach out, it's not with clarity, it's not with an apology, and it's not with closure. They'll reach out with mixed signals. Watching your stories, liking your post, or texting something random late at night. And what that means to you is this: you're going to feel that spark of hope. You're going to ask yourself, why now? What does this mean? Are they coming back? Do they regret it? And the biggest mistake people make is confusing those mixed signals with change. Now, if you've been doing no contact the right way, then you're going to be clear on what you feel, honest about what you need, and most of all, you'll be strong enough to ask the one question that really matters. Has your ex really changed, or are they just looking for the next distraction? If this video helped you see the situation more clearly, there's something else you need to know. I've made a follow-up video that reveals the exact timeline of when an avoidant ex experiences regret. And if you're feeling abandoned by how quickly they moved on, then this simple meditation will help you feel connected and calm again. You can watch them both here.